We are very privileged today to have with us Jim Greer from Encore. Most of you know that Encore is the largest transmission and distribution utility in Texas with more than 10 million customers. Jim is a registered professional engineer who holds a Bachelor of Science degree in electrical engineering from UT Arlington and an MBA from Texas Christian University. He's also been through the advanced management program at Harvard Business School. But more to the point for our purposes, he is currently Chief Operating Officer of Encore. And so he's agreed today to share with us some of Encore's experience in the kinds of markets we've been talking about all morning, although specifically we're now talking about the ERCOT market. So please join me in welcoming Jim Greer.
Well, good afternoon, everybody. It's really a pleasure for me to be here today. Of course, my mom always said you have a strategic advantage if you talk while others are eating, so I'm going to stay true to that. Also, as I shared with some folks at the table, I feel a little bit like I'm interrupting such a wonderful dialogue today with kind of my discussion here. I think, as you mentioned, I'm with Encore, and in the ERCOT market, we're strictly a transmission distribution utility, so strictly a transportation provider, if you will. So we're kind of a little bit on the outside of the discussion around energy versus capacity. But we do think that a lot of things that we're doing, a lot of the technology-related initiatives that we have, hopefully will be an enabler, of some of the things that y'all have been talking about this morning, as well as throughout the program. So with that, I'd like to kind of talk a little bit about what we're doing at Encore, and hopefully more importantly, talk about where we see the electricity industry, from our standpoint, from a delivery standpoint, and hopefully that will kind of mesh into some of the topics and issues you've been talking about today. Now, a lot in this room probably don't recognize some of these things. That device on the right-hand side is the first cell phone, which is roughly 30 years ago. And likewise, on the left-hand side, and I don't remember this picture, but that's 1 gigabyte of storage about 20 years ago. Cost of that 1 gigabyte back then was $300,000, by the way. And it's of course now, you've got all that right here for free, virtually, if you want to do that. And I guess my point is that technology's moved a long way in the last fill in the blank 20, 30 years. And I think for our industry, for the electric utility industry, really the last 5 to 10 years have been a really major shift in the technology enabled of the grid. Now, I'm sure where Paul is, but Paul mentioned about our speed in the electric utility industry being glacial, maybe, perhaps. We can talk about that. But, I think we've got a really golden opportunity here that I think a lot of companies, a lot of the utilities around the United States, we're on the verge of really being able to make a big shift, a huge change in the way that certainly we deliver electricity, and hopefully consumers are able to consume that electricity and understand what it is. I guess what one of the tipping points I think we've seen is that for a lot of years, the utilities like Encore have been putting out a lot of advanced equipment, a lot of technology, really out of sight, out of mind of a lot of our consumers and customers. Not that we're trying to hide it, but things in the substation, things on the transmission grid, remote switching and things of that nature really benefit the customer, but kind of out of sight, out of mind. But when we started our smart meter deployment, some 4 to 5 years ago, we're really touching the customer. And while we do a lot of things very well, probably describing this technology to others, we kind of fell short of. But again, I think we're at a point that we can really make a lot of headway from a technology standpoint, really try to enable a lot of things that you're discussing today. So I also need to say that I'm a recovering utility CTO. I'm a licensed professional engineer, as was mentioned. And so I'm in step 3 of a 12-step program trying to recover a little bit. And my colleagues have told me that despite what some of you may think, most folks don't want to talk about static VAR compensators or advanced switches at a cocktail hour. And so I'm trying to get over that. Thank you, Elizabeth. I appreciate that vote of confidence. But it just kind of, we are maybe excepting for a lot in this room, really driven by engineers, a lot of technology focus. And I think that drive is maybe kind of took the edge off of our focus on the customer, and we talked a little bit about that a moment ago. So I think one thing I'm really trying to focus on is how do we kind of connect the consumer in the dialogue and what we're trying to do here. And we talked a little bit about DR this morning and things like that. And I think how can we include the consumer in really understanding what the benefits are. Because we've been talking to our customers about all this great technology we've been deploying, but I think really talking to them in a language that we really, that they don't understand, really a different language. And so we need to get over that. And it's really caused us some problems, I think, as we talk about all these benefits, and they have yet to really connect and understand what the benefits are to them of some of this technology. And I think that's really caused us some issues to really help the customer understand how to use this technology and how to benefit from it. So we'd like to talk a little bit about a different way to look at this. We're really trying to kind of put our customer lens on and try to look at this technology deployment, not so much from an Encore operator standpoint, but from a customer standpoint. A lot of customers, a lot of things that we're doing are wondering, well, why didn't you do this 10, 15, 20 years ago? And the technology has evolved. Why haven't you been deploying this type of technology? Well, I think there's several things. And again, Paul's discussion, I think, about glacial movement. But I think there have been some other things that have kind of slowed the adoption rate down. I think one of those is that from mostly an integrated utility standpoint across the United States and maybe outside the United States, the vast focus over the last 30, 40 years has really been on the generation side. A lot of investment in technology, really trying to improve heat rates, trying to improve emission controls. So a lot of focus for an integrated company has been over on the generation side. And right, wrong, or indifferent, I think the delivery network has really been kind of pushed to the back. And now I think we're to the point now that we need to start focusing more on the utility side, on the delivery side. And I think that's what we're seeing. I think also the advances that we've seen in telecommunications and microelectronics that have enabled the cell phones of today and things like that, those advances are now being picked up by our equipment vendors and able to develop really utility-grade gear that we can put out in mass scale, that we can put out and hopefully it'll perform for 30, 40 years, which is kind of our paradigm. And it's just now, for the last really 5 years that we got to that point where we can do that, do it in a cost-effective way because of our, obviously, focus on cost and our regulatory oversight. We can't just go out and deploy it because it's cool. So there's a lot of things that have been, I think, kind of holding us back a little bit. And I think one other thing is that even today, in a lot of states around the United States, is the regulatory construct and the regulatory, how should I say, opinion about how technology should be deployed on the grid. And I think the commissioner's not here right now, but we are very fortunate here in Texas to have a very forward-looking regulatory climate. The commission has been very supportive. A lot of the technology initiatives that we believe we need to deploy. So I think we're kind of in a unique situation. I think there's other states around the country that those utilities don't have that same sort of regulatory support or regulatory certainty, and thus maybe have a little bit different issue regarding moving forward on some of these technology deployments. So we've been investing, there's my static bar compensator picture. If y'all want to talk about that, I'd be glad to do that. But hey, we have been installing a lot of technology. Again, a lot of that is kind of out of sight, out of mind. But we are getting to the point where we are affecting customers in a beneficial way. They're starting to see the benefits. I want to focus on our advanced metering a little bit, not so much from the commercial market side, but we did just finish our advanced metering system deployment in December, some 3.3 million meters across about a third of the state of Texas. And more importantly, we've integrated that information flow with our outage management system. And so on a typical day, we'll get about 20-25% of all outages being reported to us before a customer even knows that their lights are out. And that may not be important to a lot of folks, but if you're away at work, if you're on vacation, most of the time we're able to fix that outage before you even know you had an outage. So those are the things that you're finally getting to the point about connecting the dots about all this technology deployment and being able to say, why am I paying for this? Why am I investing in this? And that's not even to mention all the benefits from being able to use this technology from a demand response standpoint and things like that. One of the other things we've done is actually taken that outage information and put it out on a publicly facing outage map. Again, that may seem like a small step to a lot of you, but from an operations guy, I was really scared about putting this information out there, because I know as soon as I put it out there, the information is wrong and people say, I know I have an outage, I don't see it. There's a host of issues around that, but obviously everybody in this room and all of our customers want more information. They want more real-time information. And so we're trying to step it up and try to figure out how to communicate with our customers. A lot of this technology is smartphone enabled. If you want to text us with your outage, or if you want to receive a text back saying, we found the issue and here's our estimated time of restoration. So we're really moving forward a lot on customer-facing investments. So where are we going from now? What we're trying to depict is what does the state of our industry look like in the next 10 to 12 years. And it's been really hard to describe to a lot of our customers about what can be. And I think it kind of goes back to the issue, I don't know if it's an issue or not, but when you had that first cell phone in your hand, did you really envision this? Did you really know you needed this? Well, we're trying to paint a picture of what can the utility industry look like versus just having a wire and a transformer connected to a meter to your house. What can we enable? What can we do as an electric utility delivery company, or what we can enable the market to provide to customers? So we're looking at how can we provide really flawless service? How can we provide zero outages? I mean, that's really, if you look at all the surveys of what's important to a customer that we take, price is an issue, and tree trimming is an issue, but by and large, it's outages. I mean, that's the same way it's been for 20 years, regardless of technology. So how can we develop a grid to where it's resilient enough to create an environment of zero outages? And by the way, have that in a cost-effective manner. From a business standpoint, again, outages. You talk about high-tech customers, talk about chip manufacturers, things like that. It's a big deal. They want to have better control about their power quality, better forecasting of what's going to happen to the grid, so they can perhaps make changes internally to their processes to help mitigate that. Again, reliable power, but at a cost savings as well. So what I'd like to do is what we've tried to do is kind of go out on a limb and put together a video of what we think this new future looks like. And I'll guarantee you whatever we put up here is going to be wrong, or at least, but directionally this is where we're trying to go. And we'll try to iterate on this, and next year we'll have a different vision and whatnot. But this is really kind of meant to spark discussion, really try to engage our customers about what can be. See if I can do this now.
Our world is changing. New opportunities. Greater challenges. We're thinking about the future of electricity and how it could look every day. Zero outages. Greater consumer control. A grid so advanced, it enables new products, ideas, and innovation. But is this vision of the future really possible? We think it is.
thanks for that.
So who's the Van Halen fan?
I'm not going to name names here, but, well, hey, as I mentioned, so I don't know, 5% of that might be reality in, 5 or 10 years, I don't know. I tell you, our linemen are ready for that little camera device. They think it's real, no matter what I say, but I think what we're trying to do is try to, tickle everybody's concept of what can be, and trying to kind of at least create something to shoot at, something to engage people with and talk about what can be with regard to really technology on the grid. Again, who knows what we're going to have in the next 5 or 10 years, but I think we'll be ready for that, just the technology advancement that we've all seen. But I think we've really struggled, I think, from a customer standpoint to really try to draw that picture, paint that picture of what can be and how they can be part of that discussion. And I think that's what we're trying to do now, because we've got to figure out how to make that connection and let them understand what they can do to be a part of this. And candidly, I think a part of that disconnect is why we don't see some of the reaction here in the ERCOT market to some of the things that market has put out. It's just there's a disconnect there. So with that, I'd love to hear what you think about that and contrary opinions, and which I've heard a few this morning. But that's our vision of the future. So open to Q&A.
Yeah, okay. Because we're videotaping, if you have a question, raise your hand and I'll bring the mic to you. Do you have one here? Okay. Why don't you get that side of the room and I'll get this side?
Question for you. Okay, question for you.
Yes, sir.
A lot of what you showed included a zero outage on the telecommunications industry. Are you going to enter the telecommunications industry in a big way to provide the 100%, or are you going to remain dependent on, can you hear me now?
Well, I think it depends. I mean, just like today, we've used public, private to deploy advanced metering. We deployed a RF mesh radio system across 50,000 square miles of Texas to enable that. But we use other public networks for backhaul. But I think it's going to depends, first of all, where the technology heads, where the telecom goes, and if there's gaps to be able to enable this in a cost-effective manner, then yeah, I mean, we run a pretty big telecom network already. But that's not our goal. Our goal is to try to enable some of this technology and try to fill in gaps where we have to. But good observation, yeah.
A question over
Yes,
here.
sir.
So a lot of what you show has end-use retail customers interfacing with devices, interacting with their usage. You guys have been a big part of rolling out technologies so far that provide the platform for that, some of the underlying and enabling technologies for that. One of the criticisms of the whole demand response approach as part of the solution to the long-term resource adequacy problem is that the retail community has some real barriers to rolling out devices to their customers in the face of customer churn, customer acquisition costs. There's a lot of hurdles there, particularly to get down to that granular residential consumer, who I think we saw some slides earlier today, that they're half the problem on the system peak, but they're the least willing to interrupt, and we can't seem to get over that threshold barrier of getting the devices, getting the capabilities into their hands to use the tools that you guys are rolling out. One of the things I'm curious about then, in this particular market, given where you guys stand in the middle of the regulatory universe as a transportation provider for the energy, is there a role for you in bridging that gap, in rolling out those devices, or is that a gray area that a regulated wires company does not want to tread into? What are the discussions there, and what's the future look like there? Because people have been arguing about that disconnect for 3 or 4 years now,
Sure.
and I haven't seen a model yet that breaks through.
Well, let me try to clear. Yeah, truly, we've depicted some things that today are really kind of outside of Encore's realm. And part of that is just, again, to try to describe the entire picture, you have to kind of step over that. I still think we're more of an enabler, trying to enable others to provide a lot of these types of services and benefits to the consumer. But much like today, I think if there's a market need and if others aren't stepping forward and the commission and the policymakers think that's an important part, it will step up. And maybe that's maybe that's just a temporary thing, let the, kind of the market catch up. Because I think one of the issues that we talked about a few minutes ago is that, obviously from a competitive retailer standpoint, you need to have that critical mass. You can't put all the money in to develop a technology or a product or a service and try to get out there and market it to, a very small element of the population. And so, I think back when we started the advanced meter deployment, there was a concept, a lot of the development work we did, I'm getting a little bit off your topic, but hopefully I'll come back around. We focused a lot on the consumer-facing benefits of the advanced metering. So time of use, all the commercially available products. But again, we were well into our deployment before a lot of retailers probably saw the critical mass and made the decision to really start developing and marketing those types of products. So that gap there, it really caused some issues from a deployment standpoint. And so that might have been a case where maybe there should have been kind of a gap filler that we could have stepped into to help kind of prime the pump until the competitive market was ready to enter for whatever reason. So our intent is probably to still be more of an enabler than to be a delivery of this. But again, I think we're just trying to kind of show what can be out of this. So I don't know if that addressed your, all right.
Additional questions? Anybody? Oh, sorry.
Jim, you talked a little bit about the price disconnect on the market part, but you have a lot here on the reliability piece. Do you have any ideas or ways to bridge that gap on what that reliability is worth to a customer? Since you talk about energy storage and batteries,
Right.
prices up here.
Well, and you're right. So the cost of a lot of the enabling technologies that we look at in the video are out of market. I think we're trying to say who knows what that battery technology is going to be in the next 5 or 10 years, maybe driven by others besides just the utility industry. But, just to kind of describe where Encore is, if you look at our cost structure with regard to reliability, we're in the, let's get this wrong, lowest 25% of cost, so the best 25% and the best 25% of reliability. And we think that's a good area to stay in it. And one of the ways we think we can stay in that zone is by increased adoption of technology. So not necessarily raise costs, but also kind of balance the additional benefit from the new technology, maybe reduce costs in other ways. Think of the advanced meter rollout. We've been able to dramatically reduce the cost of say a market switch, a customer deciding to change retailers. First of all, we can do it instantaneously for the market, not for us, and we can do it for a fraction of the cost it used to cost. And that's by the adoption of technology. So I think we can improve or hold reliability at a very good cost structure and reduce a lot of the other costs that we have to kind of keep that balanced. But you're right, it's not a now technology, but everybody's looking at battery technology and things like that. So maybe battery, maybe a combination of distributed generation, to help make that happen. But I think what we're saying is that there is a way to not just ignore the fact that you're going to have an outage. Yes, sir.
Maybe this is sort of the same question, but I'm an environmental economist, and one of the things we like to teach our students is that zero is almost never the right answer, especially for pollution, right? You never want to actually go all the way to zero. So why do we think zero is the right answer here for outages?
I think that's our audacious goal. We're still going to have some sort of gap, some sort of issue. No system like the grid is going to be zero, but that's our goal. And I think for a lot of the typical outages that we have, a combination of the self-healing grid with automated distribution, with either distributed generation and either home-based or community-based storage, a combination of that, I think we can get pretty close to that. But you're right, it's probably riding that curve to that last 1 minute of outage is probably pretty cost prohibitive. But again, that's our goal. Yes, sir.
Jim, thank you for that. Firstly, the video overall. I'm curious, Encore has had perhaps one of the most unique experiences in terms of this marriage of people and technology of any organization in the country, perhaps in the world. 3 million people you've reached out and you've touched personally with technology in the last 3 to 5 years.
Yes, sir.
What were the really big learnings and understandings and how you really enhance that marriage between people and technology? And what can we as a society and a community really take from that that has tremendous ramifications for so many other parts of our future?
Well, I appreciate the question. Certainly, we've got some fairly large lessons learned. I'll just say that. First of all, we did recognize the need for some sort of customer education program. The commission agreed with that, and we actually had a funded education program in place. But I don't think it should have been more front-loaded. I mean, we started the communication almost at the same time we started our deployment. And so consumer lack of understanding or misunderstanding of what we were trying to do. I mean, a lot of, outside of this room, say, I'm going to give you a brand new meter. Aren't you excited about that? Well, first of all, most people don't know where their meter is. I'm sorry, this room probably excluded. And if they do, they don't know how to read it. And I'm talking about the old technology. So why should I care? And so it's why should I care? Why should I get excited? Why is Encore, why is the state kind of going through this? And that's the big gap. As I mentioned, a lot of the, had we done it over again, I think we would have shifted the consumer commercial facing benefits with the operational benefits. I think people really understand that I don't have to call in because my lights are out because the Encore knows. If we'd kind of time shifted that up versus focusing on some of the market facing transactional base that candidly the consumers didn't understand as much, I think we would have gotten a lot more acceptance and understanding of what we're trying to do. But I think it's that maybe we viewed it too much as more of just a technical infrastructure upgrade versus something that I had no idea that consumers so much in love with their old analog meters. And I just don't think we did a good enough job of really explaining why. And I think if we had done a better job of that, we've had a lot more uptake.
Hi.
Yes, sir.
So I'm impressed with the commitment to low-cost, reliable service on the part that you're responsible for, the distribution system, the delivery system. And some of that means reducing sales by line loss reduction. And it seems like that's a priority. And I reading some unattributed statements by utility executives when they speak candidly, sometimes they say, well, we don't really have incentive to do that because we don't really get any credit for that, and it actually hurts us because that's fewer dollars to cover our fixed costs. So I wonder if you could talk about the regulatory incentives and the corporate motivation that you've worked through to allow you to be committed to optimizing line losses and doing all these things with even static bar compensators that
Thank you for mentioning that,
you're
by the way.
welcome. I was just, thank you. But for all of these things that you're doing, how have you navigated some of the issues that all utilities are navigating and landed here with this kind of level of commitment?
Well, as I said before, and I'll say again, I don't want to kind of beat this in the ground, but first of all, I mean, we've got a very favorable environment. We've got a structure, both at the legislature and at the commission, that they understand where we need to go. But they understand why we need to deploy advanced meters, and we got legislation, regulation that support that. And I understand that may be different. Likewise, I think we've got to be accountable to doing it in a very cost-effective way and showing benefits. So I think it's while some of this may not be a hard benefit to Encore, there is kind of the intangible benefit of doing the right thing. I mean, these are things that any other company would be investing in. I'm thinking about a telecom company or fill in the blank. I mean, this is the kind of stuff they would do. They already have done as far as being able to understand what's going on their grid. So part of it is just what a prudent utility should be investing in. You have to do it in a prudent way and be able to show that you're doing it in a very cost-effective way. But I think it's getting to the point where consumers, and all this stuff really does dollar out, whether you, and in our market, it's a little bit hard. You know, we have some of the savings perhaps on the Encore side. Some of that might be realized in the competitive area. But again, I think the legislature and the regulatory commission have been able to kind of piece that together to where, in total, the customer will be able to see the true benefit of that. So I think still, even though we don't get a true, economic benefit directly, I think being able to invest in the grid, get a good return on that, show that it's a prudent investment, improve customer service, improve reliability, those are all true, benefits to Encore and its customers. I think as long as you kind of stay within those guidelines, we're going to be treated very fairly and enable the market to be what it really needs to be.
This has been another discussion that could continue for much longer, I'm sure, but our schedule won't allow it. Thanks once again for sharing your time with us, Jim.
Thank you very much.